Okay, let's do it. So welcome everyone. Today we're going to be talking about building your conference selling strategy. So this is one of the live training events that I like to do as part of the work that we're doing together. And so throughout the course of the presentation, as we're getting going, what we're going to do is, as I said, we're going to focus on three. We're going to take this in three parts. So first 15 minutes or so, giving you some key elements as to why this topic, building a conference selling strategy, is really important, and some key principles. Then we'll give you a view of some of the tools that you can use. And then part three, we'll give you some steps, some really specific steps that you can start to implement right away for any conferences and events that you have coming up. So one of the things I had planned to do was get a little worksheet together that you could use. And I couldn't quite get the worksheet the way I wanted it to get. So that's coming. So if you're watching this recording as part of the member site, hello. And you should see the worksheet next to the recording that's here on the video. And for those of you that are here live, we'll get that sent out to everyone as a follow-up to the training once we get rolling. So let's do it. Build your conference selling strategy. So why is this important? First and foremost, why do we want to talk about building a conference selling strategy? Well, first of all, we know that conferences are really, really expensive. It's not just, obviously we think about it in terms of our money that we're spending to travel there, hotels, airfare, all that stuff. There's also, of course, the price or the investment that we're making in a booth, should we decide to do a booth or any sponsorships around that. The other expense, of course, is our time and the opportunity cost of going to these events. It's not just the 2 or 3 or 4 days that we're away from the office that the email is stacking up and the messages are stacking up and the product is, all the needs around the product side need to get taken care of. But it's also the work before the conference. It's the work, the follow-up after the conference. There's a lot of time investment to doing conferences. Even if we're doing them right, we have to make sure that we're spending that time wisely. So first and foremost, we know events and conferences are really expensive. The second thing I think is really frustrating, at least it's frustrating for me, is when you go to a big events, whether it's 1,000 people or as many as 10 or 100,000 people, like you're walking around, you know that there are prospects everywhere. You know that there are people at this conference that could be and should be using your product. You know they have the problem that you can solve. And one of the things that's really frustrating is knowing that you got these people hanging around at the conference, but you don't exactly know which person exactly has the problem and who they are and how to get in touch with them. And I think the third thing that's really frustrating is that, you know, you're at this conference and the place is buzzing. You can just kind of feel the energy, and you're sitting there in the middle of it. And you're ultimately, I think, the biggest fear that we all have is, look, I've spent this time, I've spent this money, I've got this booth, I've got, you know, the investment here. Am I wasting my time? And so what we want to avoid, of course, is that situation. And so where we want to go is first, we want to fill our dance card. So the dance card is something it's kind of an old Americana piece of history. In the past, I remember interviewing my grandmother for a report that I had to do when I was in grade school. And that's how she met her husband. My grandfather was at a dance. It was like a high school dance. And it used to be that, you know, every guy would get a dance card, and then he would go and ask women, you know, can I dance with you? Dance number 5, dance number 6, dance number 7, and he'd fill out this dance card. And so I use this analogy when we're talking about conferences and events, is that we want to have our own dance card, and we want to fill that dance card with the people that we want to dance with, the people that we want to meet with, the people that we want to spend time with. In that case, of course, it's our customers or our future customers. So first and foremost, when we go to those events, if we can fill our dance card, even if we don't get any other leads through booths or random interactions, at least then we've had a productive, intense amount of time at that 2 or 3 or 4 days that we're spending at the conference. The second thing we want is a positive ROI. So for that time and money that we spend, because of the intensive amount of people and the kind of the compression of the event, what we're really looking to do is put in some time and get a huge ROI, a huge return on that time and monetary investment. Conferences and events are really, really great because it's a chance for everybody in the market to come to one place instead of us having to go out physically to different cities and talk to people, or to obviously do our phone calls or to do the emails or do whatever it takes to get in touch with people. Instead of us going out one at a time, it's a chance for everybody to come to us. So it's a really unique experience. And so if we're going to be investing that time and money, we want to get that positive ROI. And the third thing I think we really want is a system that works. I'm a big fan of the company Tesla just because of how they've automated the process and how they automated the automobile industry. And I think about that whenever I'm thinking about selling systems in general. And so for our conference sales strategy, our conference selling strategy, we want to treat that and we want to build that like a system, so that after we've built our conference selling strategy in our system, we can just kind of take that as a conference in a box and then apply it to each and every conference that we want to go to. So the first couple of times that we're building that conference strategy, it's going to take a little bit more time. But then now we have this system in place and we just know that, okay, 6 weeks before the event, we start our interactions. 4 weeks before, we start setting meetings. 2 weeks before, we're getting all the final details, so on and so forth. So that allows us, ultimately, the place we want to go is to grow and scale our company. So let me just pause there. Any questions on that? Does that make sense? Everybody agree? Anything I missed as to what's frustrating or what we want from the conference selling strategy? We all good? I'm kind of curious, in the chat box, if you would, type in one thing that you find either particularly useful or particularly frustrating about conferences. So take a second, go into the chat box, and type in an answer. Oops. Get back to, just stop the share. Cool, so in the chat box, I'm gonna type a question to everyone. What's most frustrating or useful about events or conferences? I want to kind of take your temperature on this one. So take a second. If you've just, Rod, you mentioned that you were at a couple of conferences last fall. You got some more coming up. Malin and Karina, you all just did a round of small events. Anything particularly frustrating or particularly useful about the events or conferences? And I have to have an answer on that from everyone, or at least a couple of people, or we're not allowed to go on. That's the rule. Brian's saying what's useful is one-stop shop. Yeah, for sure. Like we were talking about, and identifying prospects on the floor. Yeah, for sure. It's really tough sometimes when you're seeing, it's almost like being at a bus stop. Like you're seeing these cars go by, you're on at a traffic light, you're seeing these cars go by, and you're like, okay, who are these people? What are they doing here? It's the same way. It can be really frustrating. You see hundreds of people walking by your booth and not knowing who is a prospect and who's not. Great. Rod's saying that people that come to conferences but don't attend voluntarily, so they're kind of forced to go. It's like part of their job. They don't really want to be there, and you can tell that they don't want to be there and not willing to talk. Yeah, that's super frustrating, for sure. Malin's saying that something that's frustrating is to quickly evaluate if the lead is good or not, for sure. And the positive side is there's a good amount of opportunity in one place. Varun saying it's great to be able to do a face-to-face with multiple people you're talking to across different companies in one place. Yeah, that's a really interesting point. So let me just articulate that. Thanks for chiming in there, Varun. So, a lot of times, you'll go to a conference, and I just had this with a new team that I was working with yesterday, and they were fortunate enough to be able to do a little pitch, like a 10-minute pitch about their company. And the good news is that one of this senior vice presidents was in this room watching the pitch, and then the senior vice president immediately texted 2 other people from his company that were at the event and said, hey, you need to go by their booth. So there's 2 other people said, hey, Steve saw your presentation and said we should come by and check you out. And so now you've got 2 people and you've got face-to-face, because you kind of create more communication. You get more people involved, because I've always found one of the things that's most frustrating about selling is we might have one contact that's a real big supporter and a really great line of communication, but trying to get to the other people within a company can be really, really tough when you're doing things over the phone or doing things on email or doing things on a web meeting. It's a lot more difficult sometimes to break through that one person. Whereas at a conference, if there's 2 or 3 or even as many as 5 or 10 people attending a conference from one company, now you get a chance to meet more people, and you've got a lot more control of the sale, because now you're talking to multiple people at the same company instead of just one point of contact. Does that make sense? Oh, good. Awesome. Thank you for chiming in. This is great. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling the energy. And it's not just the coffee that I'm drinking right now. It's coffee with a shot of espresso in it. All right, let's keep moving then. So 5 key principles, and here's where I'm going to kind of transition over to the whiteboard here. And what I've got is just it's both a couple of principles and a little bit of a model that I think will be really useful. So if you've got some paper with you or something that you want to write down on, you can draw along with me here. And so make sure get this centered. Can everybody see the triangle here? Everybody's good? Loud and clear? Awesome. Thanks, Varun. Cool. So we're thinking about 5 key principles. And I want to start at the top, and then we're going to work our way down on this triangle. And the 5 key principles all start with the word out. They're all compound words. And so the first key principle that we want to think about, or that is core to any conference selling strategy, is outcome. And what I mean by that is, what is the outcome that we want or expect from this conference? And so this could be different depending on your level of participation in the conference. So as an example, if you're a speaker at the conference, then you've got a captive audience. And so for you, perhaps the outcome is to show your voice of authority and then drive market interest to go to your booth and take some action there. Or as part of your speaking from the stage, maybe it's right there. You can say, look, if you go to our website right now and fill out this form, then we'll have somebody from our company contact you. That's one example of one type of participation at a conference where you might have a specific outcome. Another outcome might be based on a booth that you're setting up. So one of the teams that's part of the group here called Patch, right now today, they're setting up a booth, and their outcome for that booth, they're actually hoping to swipe credit cards at that booth, because their product, one of their products is I think it's like $100 a month kind of product, and they have exactly the right buyers that are going to be at this conference. And $100 a month, what they're doing is proposing ways for people to try it out over a 3-month period for a really low investment. And so right there at the booth, they've got the ability to swipe credit cards. And so their outcome is to actually sell the product, right? So that's a second kind of outcome based on a different way that that you might participate in a conference. So the first is speaking, the second is booth. A third outcome might be, look, I'm not speaking, I don't have a booth, but I'm going to go as an attendee and I want to have a full bounce card. And so the outcome for you might be to meet new executives that you might not otherwise have access to, or have not been otherwise able to get a meeting with over the phone or via email. And it's an opportunity to perhaps meet executives and people that you've been talking to over the course of the last couple of weeks or months, and say, oh, great, we're both going to be at this event. Why don't we talk about next steps wherever we are in the sales process? So depending on your level of participation, you want to make sure you're really zeroing in on what is the outcome that you want for that conference. Because otherwise, what this does, if we have a really clear outcome, then this gives us focus, right? We know what activity we're driving towards. It gives us intent, right? Because if we don't have a specific outcome designed for our conference, whether we're speaking or running a booth or just going as an attendee, then the whole exercise is just pointless. It's just like a feel-good exercise. Yeah, I went to some conference and I'm hoping that I might meet somebody that I could sell to. If we're going to invest that much time and money and effort into going to an event, let's have an outcome in mind so that we know everything we're doing is a specific intent, we have a specific focus. Does that make sense? Cool. So the second thing, the second principle here, so that's principle number 1, is having an outcome. The second principle is what I call outliers. And what I mean by outliers is that we need to be able to quickly assess and sort out the people that are coming to meet with us and the people that are coming to our booth. So if we think about this, the term outliers, we think of it from a statistical standpoint. And let's say that over the course of a 2-day period, let's say you had 150 people that came to your booth, right? Well, what I mean by outliers is that there's probably some of those 150, and maybe it's 10%, maybe it's 5%. There's some of those 150 that are actively looking to buy a solution. They're there either because they want to check out new vendors, or they want to check out solutions, or they have a specific problem that they're out to solve. And they're there because they want to buy something. Now, the other outliers are the people like Rod had mentioned in his comment. Sometimes these are the people that just don't want to be there, right? These are the people that are they're just a waste of your time. These are people that, yeah, you can scan my badge because I want to get the free cookie that you're giving away at the booth, right? They're just there because they have to be there, or they're looking for free stuff. And so right in the middle, of course, is everyone else. That's the rest of the leads, for example. And so when we're talking about the word outlier, what we're looking for are the buyers. And so when we're setting up our conference selling strategy, what we want to do is be able to ask specific questions. We want to be able to know what 2 or 3 or 4 questions we can ask pretty quickly to anybody who stops by the booth, or people we might meet randomly in certain lines, or people that we're meeting with that we might have a meeting set up for. We want to know who are the buyers and who are not the buyers, who's just everyone else. Because if we're looking to get return on investment for this conference, we want to be able to identify the people on this end. These are the outliers, ultimately, that we're looking for. And then the rest of the leads, of course, over the longer run, maybe over the course of the next week or a couple of weeks or the next months, we can find out which of these become buyers over time and which of these are just a waste of time, or just not ready, or just not interested in buying. So our job as part of our conference selling strategy is to identify how do we get to the people that want to buy? How do we find those outliers? And how do we get rid of the people on the other side that are just a complete waste of time? And I'll give you a couple of tools in just a little while that you can use to help you with this, to sort out the people that are interested and ready and want to buy, and the people that are just a waste of your time. So that's the second principle. We good so far? Rock and roll. Okay. So the third principle here that we want to think about is outside. And what I mean by that is we want to get outside of our comfort zone. We want to get outside of the booth. We even want to get outside of the conference altogether. And so what I mean by that is, a lot of times we might say, look, we're going to spend this money, we're going to sit at this booth and just kind of like, hope that the right people come by. And that's how we're going to spend time at the conference. It's just going to sit there for 2 or 3 days and, talk to the people who come by the booth. What we actually want to do is think outside of that booth. What meetings can we set up? Can we fill up a dance card outside of the booth? How can we interact with people that are coming to the conference before the event? How do we interact with them, say, in the evening hours for breakfast or for dinner, in the morning hours for breakfast, even outside of the conference hours that day? And of course, how do we get in touch with people, and how do we interact with people outside of the conference after the conference? And so if we go into our conference selling strategy with the mindset that, okay, yeah, I'm going to this event and I'm setting up a booth, that's just one really small piece of the overall strategy. We want to be thinking outside of the booth, outside of the conference, outside of the normal business hours of that event. And what that gives for us is coverage. It gives us coverage of all the people that could be going to the event, or even people that are not going to the event. So a really good example of this, one of the things that I used to do when I was at Altos Research, so we sold housing market data to Wall Street clients and people that were trading different mortgage related securities, people that were dealing with real estate. And one of the things we used to do about 4 weeks before a big conference is we took our big mailing list, and I would just send a really short one-line email and just say, hey, and then insert name, any chance you're headed to the MBA Mortgage Technology Conference next month? And that was it. So even though I didn't know who was going and who wasn't going, I'd send this email out to my list, and I would either get, yes, I'm coming, in which case, if it was a good lead or somebody I wanted to talk with, then great, that's awesome, I'm going to go there too. Why don't we set up a meeting and schedule a time to chat? Even better, sometimes I get responses back like, no, I'm not going to be there. Oh, that's too bad. How are things going? Now I've broken through maybe somebody who wasn't responding to my other emails or my other sales calls. Now, because I'm asking them about a non-sales thing, now I've created an opportunity to engage in conversation. So even the people that aren't going to the conference could end up giving us better coverage, right? And so if we don't do this, we don't think outside of the event, then we end up missing. We miss opportunity. We miss a chance to sell. So while the conference is important, it's kind of our anchor. We want to be thinking about everything else outside of that conference, before the conference, after the conference, in the evenings, in the mornings, outside of the booth, so that we can get the maximum coverage and leverage that time and money that we're investing. Good? Rock and roll? All right, let's keep going then. So the third principle that we want to think about is outreach. And what I mean by outreach is we want to identify all the places and ways that we could be getting in touch with the people at going to the conference or not. So just to give you a couple of examples, so one conference I went to last spring, it's coming up again pretty soon. There's an event called HustleCon. And HustleCon, one of the things that I'm seeing more and more of this, and I'll share my screen on this, they actually set up for anybody who is an attendee that's registered to go to their conference, they have this closed Facebook group. So once you've registered, then you're invited to join the Facebook group. And so there's 622 members, people that have been, this is from last year, and they'll be adding to this again for this year. So these are people that registered for the conference, and even before the conference started, there was hundreds of people that were joining this Facebook group, and people were emailing and asking questions and talking about the different speakers and talking about the different sessions that they were going to go to, and really creating some community even before the conference began. So I'm sitting there going like, there's going to be a lot of startups there. This is a pretty good opportunity for me to maybe make some new connections and find some new companies that I could help. And so this became a place for me to do my outreach outside of the normal channel of, say, email or LinkedIn, or picking up the phone and calling somebody. So this is one of the places where I could do outreach for that specific event. So you want to look for opportunities for, think about all the different places where you might end up doing some outreach. So a couple of other examples might be LinkedIn. So a lot of conferences will set up a LinkedIn group and specifically say, hey, this group is just for people that are going to be attending the MBA Mortgage Technology Conference, for example. And so that's another place outside of just email. You can interact with people, get outside of the normal conference and start creating some conversation with people so that you can fill up the dance card and so you can maximize and leverage the opportunity at your conference. And so the outreach is all about finding, if we do this right, that what we're doing is we're finding our targets. We're finding the people that we want to meet with. We're filling up our dance card. We're maximizing and leveraging that conversation. And so the downside is if we don't do this, if we don't look for the places to do our outreach, Facebook, LinkedIn, even if you're a lot of times if you're sponsoring or you're speaking or you're running a booth, a lot of times you'll get a list of the attendees. And if you don't even get the list of the attendees, we just had this with Varun yesterday, where he got a list of not names, but he got a list of company, title, and city that those people are at. So, okay, that's easy enough. I can take that information and send it off to a virtual assistant, figure out through LinkedIn who that person most likely is. Now I have their LinkedIn profile, and from there I can send them a personal message on LinkedIn to see if they would want to meet with me. So that's another place, another way to think about doing outreach. So it's getting lists, think about Facebook or LinkedIn or other places outside of the conference where you can start interacting and finding your targets. And so if we don't do this, then we're in the situation of just waiting. We're just kind of like hoping that something is going to hit for us. So you can see how these all kind of start to build on each other. So that's principle 4. We're going to think about, we've got our outcome in mind. We're looking for outliers. The way we do that is thinking outside of the conference, both before and after the event. And then from there, okay, well, where are the places I could be doing my outreach to those conference attendees and those potential leads? And then the last principle, the last action that we want to take is then do our outbound. This is the actual sending of messages, right? This is setting up appointments. And so by taking the initiative and setting up those meetings and filling up our dance card, what we're doing is giving ourselves control. It's not a sit and hope that I find the right person. It's not sitting in the booth and hope that the right people come by, right? So it's this control, and it's being active, right? It's being active. Because if we don't do this, then obviously we're either hoping and we're being passive. Right? So those are kind of the 5 key principles. Just to kind of recap. So 1, we want to focus on what is the outcome that we want, and it should be reasonable. If we're selling a $50,000 product, it's not reasonable to meet somebody at the booth and get them to sign up right there on the spot. Obviously, that's just not a reasonable outcome. But what is possible, perhaps, is identifying the right people at that conference that might be good candidates for a pilot program that we want to run starting in the summertime or starting in Q3 or whatever that is. So we want to think about the outcome that makes sense for our particular market, for our product, for where we are in the sales cycle. Secondly, we want to look for the outliers, the people that are ready to buy, people that are ready to take action, and at least engage with us in a serious sales conversation. So we're not, if we have 150 people come to the booth and we're a small team with limited resources, it's going to be really hard to follow up with 150 people and like call and email until hopefully some percentage of those people actually go, oh, that's right, we met at the booth, or we met at that conference. Yeah, let's do a demo. Like, we don't have that kind of time right now. Down the road, when we're big companies and we have 15-person sales teams that we can send to these conferences and give them 100 people to follow up with, great. We can take that approach. But for now, we got to look for those outliers, the people that want to buy, and make sure that we sort out the people that are a complete waste of our time. Third, as I've mentioned a couple times, think outside the conference, both before, after, outside the booth. Then we want to pick the targets where we're doing our outreach, and then finally begin our outbound so we can fill our dance card and make sure that we're in control and that we're being active to leverage this opportunity that we have. So, so those are why it's important is some of the key principles. So before I go on and kind of give you a couple more tools, resources, ways that you can go about doing this, let me turn it back over to you. And based on what you've heard so far, just like I asked before in the chat box, if you have a question about what we've covered, type in the question. We can take you off mute and talk about that. And if you don't have a question, what about these 5 principles do you feel like is most useful or most kind of an aha for you that you didn't think about before? So in the chat box, either a question that you might have about what we just covered, or what about this is particularly useful? What about this was like, oh, okay, cool, I didn't think about that. Wasn't using conferences the right way. Now I've learned something new. So I'll give you all a couple minutes while I take a drink of water. So what's most useful about the 5 principles that we just went through, and what questions do you have? I can't go on until I get a couple replies. It's a rule. So Brian just chatted in here. I like the concept of looking for buyers to be most efficient with their time. I'd like to hear your thoughts on tactics to do that. Yeah, we're going to talk about that in just a moment. I think the principally what we want to do, Brian, is of course we need to know what are the key qualifying questions around our product, about the problem that we're solving, so that we can quickly sort the people that have some urgency, have a specific need that we know we can solve, and then have a specific action that we get them to take as a way to kind of give them the choice. Do you want to take action now? Is this a sooner thing, or is this a later thing? And I'll talk about that in just a minute. So Malin is saying that, Malin Karina, the outcome, keep the focus and know what you're aiming for. Yeah, for sure. Because I think one of the distractions, what ends up happening is there's so many things happening at these conferences, at these events. There's obviously presentations, there's speakers we want to meet, there's happy hours happening, there's the booth, there's a vendor area, there's all of this stuff happening, and it can feel overwhelming. I always feel overwhelmed if I just walk into a big room and there's just like all of these people. I don't even know where to start. But if I know walking into that room that I have a specific outcome, like, hey, I'm going to go talk to 5 people, or I know I've got meetings, I'm walking into this room and I know I have a meeting with somebody at 2 o'clock, that kind of gives me an anchor. It gives me a focus around which to spend the rest of my day. Cool. Awesome. So, so let's dive into Brian's question, because there's a couple tools and resources that I want to share that I think will be particularly helpful in executing on these 5 principles. So the first tool, and I'll explain how this relates to the strategy, is Calendly. So as all of you know, or should know, I'm a huge fan of Calendly, and allows you to control your calendar. And specifically, I'll just flip over to my Calendly page just to show you how I use this. So on Calendly, the nice thing about what it does is you can set up different calendars for yourself and different time blocks. So for example, I have several different calendars. This is one of their, I'm a premium subscriber, but even their premium account is like $10 a month. And so one of the things that I did last month is I was fortunate enough to be invited to speak at an event called the Owner Summit. And so what I did while I was up on stage, at the end of the talk, I told the audience, I said, look, I just went through a couple key principles about how to build your sales process. And I know a lot of the stuff for some of you might be new, or you might have some questions. So one of the things I'd like to offer to you is a sales strategy session that takes about 15 to 20 minutes. And what we'll do is you go ahead, go over to Calendly right now. And I put this URL up on my screen. So it was nice big letters, and said, go ahead and book a time now, and you'll get a confirmation email from Calendly. And then we can talk for about 20 minutes and answer questions you might have about sales, or how you might implement some of the strategies and some of the processes that I just, oops, I forgot to share my screen. There we go. How we can implement some of these processes in your business. And so what that allowed me to do very quickly is sort out, remember what we're looking for here, who are the buyers, who's interested and who's not. So if there's 150 people in the room, now obviously not all 150 people are going to take advantage of that. Hopefully they do. But I mean, I know it's reasonable that, hey, if I can get, I was thinking I'd get 5–10% of those 150 people to say, look, I'll spend 15 minutes on the phone with you. I definitely have some questions. I think you could help me out. Then I'd be pretty happy with that. Turns out, ended up with 18 people that booked. So just over 10%, 18 people booked a time to chat with me. Now, some of those ended up into very serious sales conversations. Now some of them are clients, and some of them just weren't a good fit. I was able to help them out in a few minutes, and that was okay. We just kind of set them on their way. The whole point is that by having this mechanism in place, you can use this whether you're speaking. You can also use it in the booth. So this came up just yesterday in one of the sales acceleration calls, where one of the teams at IMIP, they're going to a trade show that's going to have, I think they said 8,000 people there, and they're having a booth. They've got 4 or 5 people from the company all going to be at this conference. It's like a huge, huge conference for them. And so the challenge they're going to have is they're going to end up with like literally hundreds of people that are going to come by the booth and either say, hey, scan my badge, or here's my card, or I love what you guys are doing. This sounds really interesting. Let's keep in touch, or I'd love to do a follow-up, or I'd love to do a call. I'd love to see a demo. So that all sounds great, but we're getting flooded now with, hundreds of people. But we know, practically speaking, not all of those people are truly interested in taking action right now. So the nice thing about using something like Calendly, if you have the booth, you can say, great, what we're doing for the people that are coming by the booth is we're actually booking a meeting right now. So you can have an iPad with you, or you can use a laptop, you can even use your mobile phone, and say, look, why don't we, here's the calendar. Can you pull up your calendar on your phone right now? And over the next 2 weeks, we've blocked out 15-minute time slots every day for people that came by the booth who asked to see a demo or who asked to see more. So what time works for you next week or over the next 2 weeks? So this is the sorting mechanism that we're talking about. Just by using something as simple as Calendly as a tool, you say, look, we've got these times set up. If you want to see a demo, great, let's book the time. Now, what's going to happen? Either that person is going to go, oh, that's awesome. Yeah, look, how about Wednesday at 3 o'clock? Like, great, we actually have that time open. Boom, confirmed. Now you're in that person's calendar. Or the other thing you're going to get is, yeah, you know what? I'm going to be so busy over the next couple of weeks, and I've been traveling a lot. I'm going to be backed up on email, and I've got another event. I've got some client travel. Excuse. And they go, look, let's just do this. Send me an email, and maybe you guys can send me a one-pager or a deck, and then I'll circulate it with the team and then get back to you, right? How many times does that happen? The point is, what we've done is we've just by using this one tool and asking that person to take action right away, we've been able to start sorting out who's serious and who's not, right? So this is why I love this tool. You don't have to use Calendly. I mean, there's other appointment tools out there like this that you can use. This is just one that I happen to use, and I've had a lot of success with it. One of the reasons I like it a lot is because you can be really, really specific about the days and times that you're available. So you can see on this calendar that I use specifically for that event, all of these are grayed out as unavailable. And the reason I actually blocked out those days, because what I told people in the audience is, look, over the next 2 weeks, I've set aside time for you, people in this room, to book a 15-minute meeting. After 2 weeks, I've got a lot of other travel, and I've got some other conferences, I'm working with clients, blah, blah, blah. So if you're really interested in chatting over the next 2 weeks, go ahead now and book a time, because after those times are gone, it's going to be a lot harder for us to get together. So I was using some scarcity there as a means to figure out who is serious and who wasn't, right? So you can do the same thing. You can set up different lengths. So I've got 15-minute calls. You can do a 20-minute call. You can schedule an hour-long call. What I would recommend for people coming through your booth or people that you're interacting with, start with a really short session. Say, look, let's do a 15-minute call. And in that call, what I'll do is help you figure out 2 or 3 key parts of your current situation. And I can tell you a little bit more about what we do. And if it makes sense, then we can talk about doing a product demo. Or if it makes sense, then we can talk about doing a meeting with the rest of your team. And so by doing this, and keeping it really short, so the friction is low for the person to say yes. Most people can say yes to a 15-minute meeting, especially if they're serious. And it also helps you avoid a situation where somebody books a 15-minute meeting, and if they're not a good fit for you, then great, you've only spent 15 minutes. But if we book hour-long demos, one, for that person, they're like, an hour feels like a lot, not ready to invest in that time. But 2, if that person turns out not to be a good fit, now we've got to spend an hour of our time with somebody who's not a good fit, who's just going to be a waste. So there's all kinds of reasons why you want to use a tool like this, because it helps you sort out leads, helps you figure out who's serious, helps you keep the friction low, and then you can always take the conversation to the next level after that. So, so that's the first tool, and the reason why I recommend using that tool. Any questions on that? Does that make sense? Are we cool on that? Make sure I get back to my PowerPoint. Cool. So that's Calendly. So the next tool that I recommend using as part of these strategies, I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn. I know that a lot of the ways that you have to use LinkedIn can be really frustrating. They make it like you have to pay a premium account. It's like $100 a month in order to get a certain number of in-mails. If you're not familiar with in-mails, the way LinkedIn is set up is that if you have just a basic account, you can only message people that you are a direct connection with. So if I'm connected to Rod, or I'm connected to Varun or Balin or Brian, I can send messages to those people directly on LinkedIn. But if I, for whatever reason, was not connected to someone, then LinkedIn does not allow me to send a message to that person unless you have a premium account. If you have a premium account, then you can use what's called an in-mail, and that's a direct message to people you're not connected with. And so LinkedIn is really useful especially in situations where you might know the names of people that are going to a conference, but you don't have their email address. So that's one reason I like to use LinkedIn. The second reason I like to use LinkedIn and like to use in-mails for my outbound as part of my outreach is because people's emails are just getting bombarded, right? I mean, we have hundreds of emails coming in every day, whereas on LinkedIn, while more people are using it more frequently, it's still something that is kind of out of the ordinary. It's outside of the flow of that constant river of emails coming through on the mobile device. LinkedIn is still a little bit separate, so you have a better chance of getting in touch with people. And the third reason I like it is because when we're communicating on LinkedIn, then we can reference directly, hey, I was on LinkedIn, saw your profile, saw that we're both connected to one other person. So there's some social validation that goes with your messages by using a platform like LinkedIn. And you can do the same thing on Facebook. Like I showed you the HustleCon Facebook groups, the same thing. You can message somebody directly on Facebook. Again, that's outside of the email world. If they're a member of that group, if there's a conference group like the one I showed you on HustleCon, well, that means that person's on Facebook. And it makes sense to send them a message inside of that platform, right? Hey, I saw you're on the HustleCon member list. I'm going to be going to the conference too. Read about your company. It'd be great if we get together and chat while we're at the event, right? So whatever platform you might find somebody is a good place to do that initial communication, whether it's Facebook or LinkedIn. So the third resource I'm a big fan of is Upwork. So as many of you know, I've got a team of virtual assistants. These are just a couple of them. Karen does all my research. Ali does all the worksheets that I do. Jerome does podcast editing. April does my sales, does any transcriptions. Tasneem, she does a lot of mobile app scraping for me. So what I've done is I've built a team of people. So what that allows me to do, for example, the work that Karen does for me is, as an example, let me actually show you what she did to give you some ideas. So I mentioned HustleCon, right? So on HustleCon, new share. So we said on HustleCon, there is this separate group of just people that are going to be attending the conference. Now, the good news is I've got 622 people I could be contacting. The bad news is I don't necessarily know a lot about those people. Like people, sometimes they don't put their work profiles on Facebook, or they may not respond to a Facebook message. Maybe instead I want to take it out of Facebook and talk to them on LinkedIn, but I don't have their contact information. So one of the jobs that I gave to Karen, I said, look, Karen, here's my Facebook account. I gave her login credentials for my Facebook account. I said, here's a group that I belong to. What I want you to do is look at these 622 members and create a list of their names. And if their company name is available, put their company name. And then if you have like the city where they're living, put that in. And then from there, I want you to do a search on LinkedIn to see if you can find their LinkedIn profile. And here is the result of that work. So basically it's a HustleCon Facebook group member list. So these are the people that are part of that Facebook group with all of the additional information about that person. In addition, I asked her, look, once you have the company name of that person, then on LinkedIn, it tells you what industry they're in. And it also tells you what size of company they are. That's all part of the LinkedIn company page profile. So now I've got a complete profile of the person, their title, their LinkedIn profile address. So I can go right to their profile from this link. I can look at their company name, what industry and how big their company is. So for me, I work with small teams, so it makes sense to contact people that are in small companies versus, these people that are working at companies that are 10,000 people each. Like I'm just not going to contact those people. So now out of that group of 622 people, there were 93 people that work at companies that are between 1 to 10. And then further, I could then filter this and say, well, what I want to do is sort this by, let's see, clear just 1 to 10. And I want to sort just people that are, say, boy, that's industry segment is what I'm looking for. Clear. So let's say I just want to look for people in the internet industry. Now I'm down to roughly 20 people. So now I've taken a list of 622 people on Facebook. I have no idea who they are, sent that job over to a virtual assistant, and now I can sort and filter that list. And now if I'm going to be doing some outreach prior to that event, say, hey, I saw you're going to be at HustleCon and you're an internet company. This is what I do. It'd be great to get together. Now I've really focused in on just these 20 or 25 people that would be the best out of 600 some odd people that I could be contacting. So it's a way to be much, much, much more efficient simply by using the folks, or using Upwork for all that sorting and for that research. Does that make sense? So that's another resource. A third resource, as it relates to the virtual assistant, on the member site, on the client site that everyone here has access to. So if you log into members, and if you just search, there's a search box at the upper right of the screen. If you just type the word virtual, you'll find a link to a presentation there on how to actually kick off a job to a virtual assistant. So I know some of you are still just starting this process of working with virtual assistants. So if you're saying, well, look, I want to get a virtual assistant, but I don't know how, well, then what I recommend is just checking out. There are 2 really short videos, they're like 10 or 15 minutes each. It's like a step-by-step how-to. So that's another resource available to you so that you can start using and building the list that you need so you can do your outreach and do your outbound work. So let me pause there. I know I just covered a ton of tools and resources and strategies. What questions do you have, or what's unclear about what we've covered so far? Because we got the last section, I'll just give you a few homework assignments that you can start doing right away, and then we can wrap this thing up. Any questions out there? Vern's asking, this is a good framework to pull together an action plan for the event. Can an outcome be identify 15 director or VP level people who are interested in a follow-up post-conference? Yeah, absolutely. So, so the question is, looking at this pyramid, if we're focused on, we're trying to figure out what's the right outcome for our event, then, I mean, the whole purpose of this is to give ourselves focus, to give ourselves intent. So Varun's question is, well, look, can an outcome be to find 15 really specific director, VP level people who I know are interested in what I'm doing? Absolutely. I think that's a really good measure of success, because if you have some metrics in place, like, hey, for every 15 people we talk to, then that are serious, 10 end up being a good match because they're qualified in terms of budget and authority and need and timing. And of those 10, we're going to get 3 or 4 into a late stage opportunity, or maybe into a pilot. Now you've got some semblance of a sales funnel that says, okay, if we go to an event and I spend 2 days and $10,000, if I can get 15 to 20 really serious targeted people, then the outcome of that over the next 3 months will be 3 to 4 pilots. Each pilot is $10,000 each. And if I can get a couple of those pilots convert to a $100,000 client, that's how I'm getting my positive ROI. And it all starts because I went to this conference where I'm super targeted and had the intent and the focus to find the people that had the right problem that were interested. Does that make sense for him? As long as the outcome can be anything. Like I said, the guys at Patch right now, they're hoping to swipe credit cards. That's very different than what you're talking about, because I know your product is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you're not going to get somebody swiping a credit card at the booth, right? So great question. Cool. So then let's wrap this up, and I'll give you a couple more specific action items. If you're sitting there going, okay, now what? I understand why it's important. I've got the principles. I know what resources, tools are available to me. Now what do I do? Well, step 1 is, for your next event, whatever that is, define what the outcome is. What is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that you're looking for here? Is it leads in Varun's case? Is it swiping credit cards? Is it booking meetings and phone calls, 15-minute kind of audits or conversations with people, pre-demo needs analysis kinds of conversations? What is the outcome that you think makes the most sense based on the event? How many people are there? How are you participating? Are you speaking? Do you have a booth? Are you going just as an attendee? Are you a sponsor? Whatever you want to consider those variables, and then define for yourself what's the best reasonable outcome for that event that's going to get me to where I need this company to go. So number 1 is defining an outcome. Number 2 is creating your offer. So I think a lot of times one of the things that places where we can fail is we can do a really good job of setting up meetings and driving traffic to the booth. If we don't have a compelling offer on the other side of that booth, of the other side of that interaction, outside of the conference after it's over, then you're going to get a lot of like, here's my card, or here, scan my badge, and then nothing. You scan 500 badges, you've collected 200 business cards, but you don't have any action coming out of that. So your offer needs to be compelling. Now that offer could be, as I mentioned, some kind of strategy call with somebody. Remember that you are experts at the problem that you're out to solve. And so there's a huge amount of value that you can add to a key person on the other side of the table. Say, look, here's the way we look at the market. If we, one of the things we like to do is a 15-minute strategy call to understand more about your situation, and we can make some recommendations about where you are with that challenge or that business problem. And then if it makes sense, we can always have another conversation or talk about doing a product demo. Maybe that's your offer, like a type of strategy call. Maybe another offer is, look, we've just published a white paper. We'd love to send it to you. So do you want us to send this to you when we get back? Maybe that is an offer that's compelling, because then you can send that white paper. You can track if somebody's opening it. Then you can schedule a follow-up call. Say, hey, I'm going to send you this white paper, and I'd love to schedule a time to get your thoughts on how you feel like your company is positioned relative to the perspectives that we're sharing in that white paper. That could be an offer, something of value to them. A white paper, an ebook, something like that. And again, maybe the offer is, look, we're putting together a pilot program. We've got a cohort, or we've got time and resources set aside where we are looking for 5 pilot customers that are going to be kicking off around May the 15th. We've already got 2 spots filled. So we're looking for the next 3 people to fill those next 3 pilot programs. So between now and May the 15th, what we're doing at this conference is identifying the people who we feel like would be the right fit for this pilot program based on their needs and our technology. So if you think you'd be interested in a pilot, then let's get together on the phone and let's discuss and make sure it's a right fit. Maybe that's an offer. So it just needs to be compelling, it needs to be valuable, it needs to be relative and related to the problem that you're out to solve. Does that make sense? So creating your offer. So first, identifying the outcome. Second, creating your offer. Third is, of course, building your target list. So I showed you a couple different ways you can do that. Even if you don't have the specific names of people, a lot of times you can build the list just with titles, location, company names. I mentioned this event, the Owner Summit, a couple of times. And one of the things, just go over to that website real quick. So I showed you that list that I had. Real quick. So here's the event page, right? And so I was speaking, and I said to the event organizer, I said, look, there's going to be like 160 people that are going to be there. Do you mind sending me a list of the people that are going to be attending so that I could send them a quick hello, introduce myself, maybe ask them a few questions about where the biggest challenge is, even before we get to the events, because that will help me identify maybe some topics I want to speak about. And they said, well, we don't really share the list with people, but if you go to the event website, these are the logos and links to each company that's going to be there and their company website. So I was like, this sounds like a job for Karen. So I told Karen, here's the event website. If you click on each logo, it will take you to that company's website. And I knew at this event, there's mostly presidents and CEOs of these companies, because it's called an Owners Summit. So I said, okay, Karen, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take the company name, go to the company website, get the company LinkedIn page. From the company LinkedIn page, it shows you who the employees are. So from there, I want you to find out who is the president or CEO or founder, whatever that title is. Then get that founder, CEO, president LinkedIn profile. And now I've got a list of the people that were most likely to attend that event. And so what I did is I took that list and I sent in-mails. I actually had Julian, who is works with me on the sales side. I made a little template email that goes into an in-mail in LinkedIn. And I said, here's, Julian, the list of people. I want you to log into my LinkedIn account and send this message, customize it a little bit. and send it to them via email. And we sent out 88 or 90, 84 messages prior to the event, and we got 33 responses. So when I talk about making a list, you have to kind of think creatively, because even if you don't get the actual list of attendees, you can still back your way into a target list. Or even if you don't have any information about those companies, you can maybe even start with the vendors, the other vendors that are going to be there. Maybe that's a list to begin with. So whatever it is, you want to start with your target list, so that step 4 is to plan your outreach, figure out where these people are reachable, whether that's, do you have email addresses? Is there a Facebook group or a LinkedIn group? Is it just a matter of picking up the phone ahead of the conference? And then finally start your outbound, whatever that is. So those are kind of the 5 steps. So 1, define your outcome. What is it that you want to get out of this event? 2, what's the offer that's going to get people excited about meeting you or excited about talking to you after the conference? 3, build your target list. 4, figure out where you're going to do your outreach based on all the places that you could find the people that are going to be attending the conferences. And then 5, start that process. One of the things that Varun and I talked about yesterday was just rank ordering. So he had a list of attendees. We said you probably have A's and B's and C's. Like the A's are the people you absolutely positively wish you could talk to if you could. The B's are like, okay, I'll talk to them if I can. And the C's are like, if there's nobody else I can talk to, then I'll talk to those people. So you can just kind of rank order those and start with your A's, work through them, then go to your B's, and then go to your C's. And so just have a strategy around that outbound. So, so cool. We're right here at the bottom of the hour. So happy to stick around for a couple more minutes if you have some questions. Is there anything I didn't cover related to building your conference selling strategy that you're hoping I cover? And or are there any questions? And if there's no questions, just type something in the chat box like, hey, we're good. I'll post the recording to this, and well, I won't. Somebody on the team will. We'll get this recording up on the member site. I'll put the slides up there, and I will have a worksheet that you can use for some of this planning in terms of figuring out your outcome, designing your offer, those sorts of things. We'll get that up over the next week or so. So Varun, you're asking, is there an offer? Are there 2? 1 to come to the booth. Here, Varun, I'm just going to unmute you. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand your question. So what was the question?
Yeah, so the question was in terms of the offer, Scott, if you want to drive more personalized conversation, which is like one-on-one, like, hey, let's have a coffee before the conference starts or during lunchtime or after the conference, are there 2 different offers one should have? And based on the level, like, hey, if it's an SVP, I guess I'd rather meet him one-on-one versus if it's a director, I'd rather have him swing by the booth.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's, you're just diving into the specifics here. Sure, like one offer to get somebody to take a meeting with you live at the event, you know, might not be compelling enough to say, hey, I've got a white paper, let me hand it to you. You might go like, okay, that's not a reason to get in touch and have 15-minute coffee. If there's something more compelling for that, a different offer for that versus an offer for somebody who swings by the booth you've never met before. So long story short, yeah, I mean, it's totally reasonable, and you probably should have 2 or 3 or 4 different offers depending on how you're interacting with that person and who that person is.
Okay, makes sense.
Cool. Great question. Cool. I think that's a wrap then. Awesome job, everyone. Like I said, I'll get everything up onto the member site, get that shared out. If there are any other questions following up, then just post those to the Facebook group, because I'll also put the recording there. And there are people that missed this will probably have some questions as well. So great job. Good to see everyone. Happy selling. And go ahead and build that conference selling strategy. Let me know how I can help. Have a great day, everyone. See ya.